If I could do the usual reminders that everyone present in the meeting should be aware that it's being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and that this recording will be archived for future viewing. All participants should mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback. And I apologise if it gets a bit noisy here. I've got a window open. And if any participant wishes to speak, they should raise their hand either on screen or using the digital function. The chat function is only to be used to highlight any technical issues and to attract the attention of either myself or the Democratic Services Officer. Today, the Cabinet's already been out and about visiting various schools and locations. We've been marking Windrush Day at the civic offices and also with the children of Halton Primary. And so I'd like to say a huge thank you to them for showing us their work and reading their poems to us. We've also been to visit Oakfield Primary School, and more about that visit I'm sure we'll be talking about later, but again, some super work going on in that school. In our meeting today, we're going to discuss a range of topics from the steps we're taking to deliver our school building programme on time and on budget, the progress to date on moving towards fully hybrid meetings and future developments in our ambition to deliver seamless 30-hour-a-week childcare, but more of that later. So without further ado, I will rearrange my screen so that we can start the meeting off. And agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I can see that Rhiannon's managed to get back from Ascot-Derry, so we're okay there. I'm aware that the deputy leader is holding the fort at Oakfield and is probably hot-footing it back now, so she'll be with us shortly. So if we could just take a note that Bronwyn is delayed. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June 2023, and if I could move those as a true record of that meeting. Mark?
And I'm happy to second that.
Oh, thank you. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest, and that would include the nature of such interests. Are there any interests to declare today? Obviously, we'll have to get Bronwyn to confirm that when she comes back. I'll just make a note of that. Then we have 2 references today in front of us. The first one is the response to the Welsh Government consultation on the recommendations of the independent review of the ethical standards framework. It's a bit of a mouthful, and also about the harmonisation of gifts and hospitality thresholds to align with an all Wales approach. This actually was discussed at Standards Committee, and it's fairly straightforward. The response is actually outlined in Appendix 1, and there are a few amendments that were suggested to the initial response. They've actually been already incorporated into Appendix 1. And that was in relation to things like summoning witnesses to appeals and tribunals. That question 7, looking at it being a general rule that hearings would be held in public, but recognising that sometimes they might not. Question 9, looking at a potential for apologies to be made. Question 10, there is a suggested amendment to the response that the words "even where there are serious safeguarding concerns" be added to the sentence. So that's been incorporated in Appendix 1 as well. And question 13 was about how we advertise vacancies for independent members in future, and it was discussing using all available channels to make sure that we get the best pool of candidates. In terms of the question 21, it was noted that all local authorities in Wales, or all monitoring officers in Wales, had committed to the harmonisation of the threshold for declaring gifts and hospitality at a proposed level of £25. But that's just £25, I think, or £100, also £100 in total a year. So if you had 10 gifts of £10, then you'd hit the threshold that way. Standards view, and to be honest, I think the view of everyone is that, I mean, I wouldn't have any hesitancy in declaring any gifts whatsoever. I think that transparency is crucially important in public service, and so even if I attend a dinner which is actually paid for, that I have to attend as part of my job, I would declare it. So yes, that's I think that's widely accepted. So in terms of the resolutions of the that came to us from the Standards Committee, their resolution 1 lays out the changes, etc., and that is for us to note. The recommendation 2 is they've recommended to Cabinet that the Vale of Glamorgan Council's threshold for gifts be amended in line with paragraph 1.5 of the report as follows, and that says gifts, material benefits or advantages, £25 or totalling £100 over a year from a single source, be approved. Recommendation 3 is that delegated authority be granted to the monitoring officer, head of legal and democratic services, in consultation with the chair of Standards Committee, to make the amendments to response as agreed by the Standards Committee at the meeting, and we would agree that. And they also recommended that the report be referred to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration, and that actually happened last night. So so if we say that we note their resolution 1 and we approve 2 and 3, and I'd move.
And I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Rhiannon, and Gwyn's got his thumb up, so we're all in agreement. Excellent. So agenda item, and this is going to take a bit more juggling because the reference has only just come through. We had the report on 8th of June about the hybrid meeting platform update, and we sent that to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for their consideration, and that was actually discussed last night, and it was an interesting discussion. It was actually taken to that scrutiny committee in parts 1 and 2, so some things were discussed in a confidential manner. But I think it's suffice it to say everybody's pleased that we're moving forward. It's been a very complex situation because we wanted to deliver a service that both met the needs of residents who were viewing meetings and also of participants in the meeting, so that they could make their voices heard and that they could participate in a way suitable or appropriate to them. There were discussions about, what other councils were doing, and officers either part 1 or part 2 were able to put councillors' minds at rest that we've actually talked to all other councils. We've shared good practice, and we've also shared some of the shared hiccups, I think, that we've all faced. But we are in a position to go forward. One thing that the scrutiny committee did say is that it would be good if we had, once we got through all this, that we had a reflections report And I think it's always good to learn, isn't it? It's always good to look back and say, you know, in what was a shifting sands situation where a company that we'd worked with for a very long time delivering our planning committee recordings actually didn't have the technology to deliver the complexity of meeting experience that we now require. So I think that if we have a report on that, or if they have a report on that, that will be very interesting. And that they've recommended to us that Cabinet is asked to consider, with reference to the council's ICT department, whether the proposed investment, as detailed in the report, for a dedicated 500 megabits per second broadband link to be installed in the council chambers audiovisual room, which would allow the hybrid and streaming systems to be completely separated from the council's internal network, is required. There was a full response given by the IT team last night, but I think that it's fair that we have a look at it before the decision is taken. So, as I said, with those two recommendations, I would move that we agree those. Is that okay if I got a seconder?
Sorry, Leader. Yes, like yourself, I was at the scrutiny meeting, and it was quite an in-depth discussion about the hybrid. And clearly, there are some members who are concerned about the progress of this project and how it's come to this point. We, as cabinet member, we're recognising the challenges that have been in place, the commercial aspects to deal with it, and I think we've got to a point now, and we're in a good position, particularly with this proposal that it meets all the additional requirements that we as a council have added on, beyond what was there originally. Our aspirations in a couple of years ago were somewhat different to what they are now, and so we're well aware that the detail we've been provided on this particular proposal is far greater, and we've learnt and we've questioned and challenged some of the things that come forward. So I've got no issues with this. And the discussion regarding 500 megabit broadband, it was understandable as concerns why we would add on something, but when the officer responded in the part 2 aspect, it was quite clear that from a technical aspect, and as much as it's security, it would be beneficial. So it's likely that we'll go ahead with it, but quite rightly so. A member part of the scrutiny challenged, and that's what they're there for, isn't it? So I appreciate that. So I'll fully support this proposal and accept their recommendations.
Thank you, Eddie. And Ruben, you wanted to come in.
Really, just to say that this has taken some time to get right, and we hope we're at that position now. But I have to say, we want the best process and the best outcome for this, because it will maximize participation, and not just that people are going to turn up to meetings, but that they can be involved and participate and scrutinize in those meetings. So it's really important that we get it right, and it's really important, as far as I'm concerned, and I know the Cabinet's concerned, that we maximize participation in all aspects of council meetings and elected members. So as well as Eddie said, I think the recommendations from the committee were good ones in terms of reflecting back, in terms of where we are now. Thank you.
Super, thank you. And Gwyn, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to support the two members that have already spoken with their comments, and this is a must for the council. I respect the views of scrutiny in many ways, but at the same time, we've got to go ahead with this. The Welsh Government would expect all councils in Wales to have the hybrid system in being, and particularly we've got to take in the Welsh Language Act, and that's got to be considered. So I'm fully in support of going ahead, Leader.
Thank you, Gwyn. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's to have Welsh language translation, so people are able to speak in their first language or preferred language. To have suitable IT, so that people who have hearing impairments can also contribute fully, so that people can view it either at the time or subsequently on iPlayer. You know, I mean, there are so many different things that we need to deliver alongside this, and I look forward to moving ahead with it. Eddie, you want to come back in?
Yeah, just just one minor note, but it's important to recognise that the officers have come back with this reference in a written form, not just from the streaming and being attending the scrutiny. So thanks to those for doing that. It's just such a short space.
Yes, it was a very, very quick turnaround of the reference to get this through. So thank you. So anyway, Eddie seconded. Are we all in agreement on this? Super, thank you. Agenda item 6 is the Q4 sickness absence report 2022-23, and we have these reports quarterly to keep a close eye on what's happening. Sorry, they're reported. They are reported every 6 months. It actually says quarterly, but they're reported through indicators. They're reported to Cabinet every 6 months. It looks slightly misleading. I think what we have to say right at the start is that we expect a lot of our staff. We expected a huge amount of our staff right throughout the pandemic, and they didn't let the residents of the Vale down in any way, shape or form. We hear a lot of discussion about home working, and some people will decide to say, oh, you know, people shouldn't be working at home. That only affects 20% of our staff. The vast majority of our staff are out delivering services to residents face to face, day in, day out. And it's been difficult. It's also been difficult. We've discussed when we're talking about, you know, budget and stuff, one of our an annual delivery plan, that one of our big challenges is the resilience of our workforce. And have we got sufficient numbers of people? And between budget cuts and between recruitment and retention as a result of the pandemic, then we often don't have those. And again, our staff step up. So there are some challenges with sickness absence, and those are broken down here within Appendix A to D, and it's very detailed analysis. So Appendix A looks at the breakdown of absence by service area, and as you might imagine, there will be differences. Appendix B, the overall sickness rate, and I think we can say that it was to be expected due to the removal of COVID restrictions in Wales in relation to, you know, to the pandemic. The most common reason for sickness is non-work related stress, and people's lives have got more complex, whether you're dealing with the impact of COVID in whatever way that is, whether you're dealing with the cost of living issues, which is affecting so many people in our communities, that there is a complete breakdown of how, you know, what is contributing to absences. Then there's a sickness breakdown by directorate, and then finally in Appendix D there is sickness by age. These are, I said, very, very comprehensive figures, And I think it's the nature of Cabinet that we can discuss, but I think that that's what scrutinies are here for, is within a scrutiny environment, we actually can interrogate it alongside sort of a cross-party scrutiny committee. And so that's what we do with these figures. We would send it to scrutiny committee, and then any of their suggestions, contributions or queries will obviously come back to us. So I've got 2 recommendations. Mark, did you want to come in before or after?
I'm happy to come in now, if that's okay,
Okay.
Leader. Thank you very much. Just to make a few comments. I mean, obviously, you know, sickness absence in the area that I have responsibility for in neighbourhood and building services, you know, it's always a challenge because of the nature of the jobs that people do. A lot of these people, these operatives, I would say in particular, work on the front line. They're constantly out in all weathers. They do a very demanding job under a lot of time pressures. There's very high expectations from the public, and quite rightly so, in terms they want the recycling and refuse collected on time, and the garden waste as well. And clearly that is a major challenge. And therefore I'm not at all surprised that, you know, sometimes people do have sickness absence because of musculoskeletal issues. But the council has a programme of manual handling training. It's important that that training is updated on a regular basis. I do have meetings with my director about this particular issue, and we'll continue to do so. But nevertheless, you know, and that's as Leader quite rightly say, there are other challenges outside. You know, we are the biggest employer in the Vale Glamorgan. It's not at all surprised that a lot of our staff have major challenges to their lives, given the cost of living crisis and given the situation coming out of COVID. And remember, many of our staff, and I'm sure many of the people in the Vale Glamorgan are suffering from long COVID and has those effects on their health as well. So there are challenges out there, but I'm not making excuses. You know, I am meeting my directors about this, and I will, you know, we're trying to get on top of this as much as we can, but you do need to bear in mind there is an important context here. So thank you.
Thank you. So actually, I was going to say you seconding it, but I haven't gone through the recommendations yet, have I? So the recommendations before us today are that the report and the April 2022 to March 2023 sickness absence figures provided in Appendix A be noted. And secondly, that the report be referred to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration, with any comments referred back to Cabinet for further consideration. But I should imagine that a lot of us, as we normally do, will attend Corporate Performance and Resources to hear the discussion in person. So I would move.
And I'm happy to second.
You're seconding. Super. Thanks, Mark. Is everyone happy with that? Yes, see lots of thumbs. That's good. Then over to Councillor Birch, Cabinet Member for Education, the Arts and the Welsh Language. And it's a fairly straightforward report, but very important. It's the procurement of multidisciplinary consultancy services for sustainable communities for learning, or the Sustainable Communities for Learning rolling programme and other linked projects. So over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we're looking for is what I'd like to introduce rather is a procurement exercise for the appointment of a multidisciplinary consultancy to assist with the delivery of 21st century schools. We first undertook this in 2016, and we're now looking to do it again for the Band B schemes, which are going to be concluded, we hope, in 24-25. So the successful appointment of ICOM Limited has supported the council to deliver 3 comprehensive school developments we'll all be familiar with: Whitmore High, Ysgol Bro Morgannwg and Pencoitra High, 3 primary school developments, including the first net zero carbon in operation school in Wales. You'll all be familiar with South Point, St David's Church in Wales Primary School and Ysgol St Barrack, as well as a childcare setting, Ysgol Dewi Sant. So the remaining Band B projects consist of 2 primary schools, Cowbridge Primary and St Nicholas Church in Wales Primary School, and an additional learning needs provision, Derry Newydd, formerly known as the Centre for Learning and Wellbeing. And then the final project will be the development of St Richard Gwyn RC Comprehensive School, which is currently going through planning consent. So what we need to think about is, following the success of this rolling programme, we are required to tender for multidisciplinary services to deliver the programme for a further delivery period. So we would need to undertake a procurement exercise under the SUTAPS, South East Wales Technical and Professional Services Framework Agreement. So the purpose would be to appoint a multidisciplinary consultancy team to provide the specialist skills required to progress with the development of this rolling programme and supplying relevant consultancy expertise in other key projects. We have professionals employed by the council already who have many of the skills that could undertake these roles, but their capacity is limited. So the valuable services provided by a specialist consultancy team with appropriate knowledge and experience will benefit the council in terms of the financial commitment and the time spent. Weighting of the assessment of tender is proposed as 30% cost, 70% quality. So we're not just going to go for the cheapest one, because obviously that doesn't always lead to best value. To allow for an informed review of submissions to ensure applicants align with the council's expected level of delivery and response to the climate emergency, particularly thinking about our zero carbon schools. So there are 2 recommendations: that the Cabinet approve the commencement of a procurement exercise for the appointment of a multidisciplinary specialist team to support the delivery of the Sustainable Communities for Learning rolling programme, and that appointment of the multidisciplinary specialist team is presented to Cabinet in a further report seeking approval of the successful tender once the tender submissions have been received and evaluated against the required criteria. So are people happy to accept those recommendations, please?
Thanks, Sharon. I'm happy to second that. And I think it's fair to say, I mean, this is an approach that we've taken, for over 10 years now. And to have a sort of a pot of expertise that can help us to do sort of quantity surveying and project management and various other things is exactly how we've managed to be so successful in delivering so many schools. I mean, every secondary school except one has been upgraded or completely renewed since 2010. Numerous primary schools, all delivered on time, on budget, and it also means that if there are challenges within the delivery that the contractors are talking to us about, then we have independent people that can look at any possible increases or contracts, etc., and can come to a constructive is the wrong word probably, but a positive outcome. And I said it's worked really, really well. So I've got no hesitation whatsoever in seconding that. And I said, I think I saw a lot of fingers, a lot of thumbs up. So yes, that's going through. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just endorse what Liz has just said. If any of you have been to South Point or any of the newly built secondary schools, you can see that they're light, airy spaces, easy to heat, easy to clean, easy to maintain, and I think they're more conducive to learning and the enjoyment of learning than perhaps some of the more cramped Victorian schools that we went to. You may love them, but they are difficult to clean, maintain, heat, etc. So I think this is, a definite move in the right direction.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, I've just been to one, just been to Oakfield, but the other thing is that these really good spaces, as the move goes towards them being community schools, will become available to our communities 7 days a week for all sorts of activities. So, and as I was talking about Oakfield, Bronwyn reappears from there as well. So welcome, Bronwyn. Just before we go on to your next report, Bronwyn, can I just check that you don't have any declarations of interest?
No, I've got no declarations of interest.
Excellent, thank you. So staying with Rhiannon then, another very important report, Early Years and Childcare Capital Programme report.
Thank you. Right, so the Early Years Childcare Capital Programme is part of Welsh Government's commitment to maintain and improve the existing childcare and Flying Start infrastructure. The main objectives for the programme are to ensure the childcare sector in Wales is strengthened, and it supports the programme for government's commitments to fund childcare for more families where parents are in education or training or on the edge of work, and delivered a phased expansion of early years provision to include all 2-year-olds, with a particular emphasis on strengthening Welsh medium provision, and to continue to support the flagship Flying Start programme. The purpose of the report is to request permission from Cabinet to submit a business justification case to Welsh Government, which highlights the necessity to develop new childcare provision, along with supporting the expansion and improvements to existing childcare provision in the Vale of Glamorgan. And should approval be given, this will go to Welsh Government, and there'll be a rigorous assessment, and then they'll make the decision. And the report recommends delegating specified powers to named officers in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder relating to the local delivery of the projects specified. So there are all sorts of reasons why we would want to do this, why the Welsh Government would want to do this. Improving existing childcare. Very often parents are now moving their children around in several different places before and after school because provision is simply not joined up. And we know many of us have been working parents, how difficult that can be. I mean, particularly when you think about parents in education, training, or on the edge of work, if there is not reliable childcare throughout large parts of the day, then they are unable to commit to doing full-time work or even part-time work because their childcare is simply not reliable. And obviously 2-year-olds are now going to be included in early years provision, which is very important. It's obviously some children will benefit tremendously from being in a controlled, safe environment outside of the home from as early a stage as possible. And I know Eddie will want to agree with me at this point. Flagship Flying Start programme, which is providing a safe educational and caring environment for many, many children. Co-location, where childcare is put onto school sites and you have the continuity of care. It's so important that children are able to see a school site as somewhere where they are cared for, nurtured, looked after, understood, sympathised with, as well as educated. And I think that that's very important, and it's something we should be pushing as much as possible. I mean, among the projects that are included are a childcare unit on Dinas Powys Primary School, Merch, so that the children will be there from 2 years until 11 years. Childcare unit St Athan Primary School site, childcare unit Cadoxton Primary School site, which obviously we know Wales Online has already told us is the best school in Wales. It's got to be applauded. Existing Bumblebees provision for Colcott Primary School. Develop new childcare through the Medium Welsh on the site of Penargarth in Penarth. Extension to the existing Cilchmaethrin about Vine, Cowbridge provision to increase childcare places, and refurbishment to an existing childcare provision, Passport to Play in Roos. So all of these things are looking to extend the childcare offer. So I don't know if you want to come in before I go to the recommendations, Eddie.
Well, I was going to move, but I'll wait till you've done that. But just to concur with what you said, that you've comprehensively covered the area of the report, and it's the impact on not just the children but the families that are also supported. Many, particularly with the Flying Start, need some additional support, and they get that from this sort of provision. And as we know, that produces a wider benefit for society, not just for the children and those that are linked to the projects that you've highlighted.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendations are the Cabinet provides permission to submit a business justification case to Welsh Government, highlighting the necessity to develop new childcare provision, along with supporting the expansion and/or improvements to existing childcare provision in the Vale of Glamorgan. That delegated authority be granted to the Director of Learning and Skills in consultation with the Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Education, Cabinet Member for Social Care and Health, Chief Executive, Head of Finance, Section 151 Officer, Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, you're beginning to wish I hadn't started, to approve the use of the Capital Programme Fund allocation for early years and childcare-led projects. That the Director of Learning and Skills be authorised to negotiate terms and conditions for the appointment of third-party suppliers and providers for early years and childcare-led projects. That the monitoring officer and head of legal democratic services be authorised to prepare, complete and execute the required legal documentation to enable third-party suppliers and providers to be appointed for early years and childcare-led projects. The delegated authority be granted to the monitoring officer, head of legal and democratic services, to prepare, complete and execute the required legal documentation with third parties. If everyone would like to agree with those recommendations, is there a seconder there?
Leader, if you don't mind, I'd like to second that. And yeah, as you've just highlighted there, Rhiannon, it takes in a lot of broad across the board in directorates and services within the council to make these things happen. So even a legal team, which don't often get recognition for what they do.
All right, so we're all happy with the recommendations. Thank you very much. Liz, you're on mute.
But I had a train going by outside. I thought I'd better not deafen you. So yeah, agenda item 9, that is our last item for today, and this is one for the Cabinet Member for Social Care and Health, and it's the recommissioning of extra care domiciliary care services in the Vale of Glamorgan. So over to you, Eddie.
Thank you, Leader. This wasn't a contest or the longest report title, honest. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval to undertake recommissioning exercise and to enter into a contract for the delivery of extra care domiciliary care services in Golwg Caredig, Barry. Golwg Caredig is a 42-unit housing provision designed to offer a safe, private and secure environment with an on-site domiciliary care provision. The Council awarded a contract for the provision of the above services to Havant Care Association 2018 for a period of 5 years, including a 2-year extension period. And this contract is due to elapse in October 23, so therefore we're seeking to go out to tender in June. You can see from the report, there's a bit of background, and it's clear that there are set guidelines on what we can, what extra care is about. We use across partners, it's housing, social care, voluntary and independent sectors. And you can see that from 1.2, it's a duty on local authorities to have regards to the importance of independence, adult independence where possible. And clearly that's what Golwg Caredig provides. The council reflects this, and particularly we've got an ageing population within the Vale. The demand is quite high, but also what you know, I often wonder why we have short-term contracts in some respects, but people's aspirations and needs change, and therefore it's appropriate that we have a retendering exercise rather than just stay with a particular provider. So that's part of this process. And it's also important to give the people it affects, the residents themselves, an opportunity to discuss and you know, have a view on what actually is provided for them. And within this report, you can see that tendering process actually includes an opportunity for the residents to interview and question the bidders when they put their tenders in. I think that's probably, in short terms, covers it off. As with the previous tenders, we do have a sort of breakdown between 70% quality and 30% price. That's not, you know, just to show that we don't use price as the only criteria for agreeing on contracts. So this report is asking them to go back to that commissioning. So if I go to the recommendations then, the Cabinet authorises the Director of Social Services, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Social Care and Health, to award the contracts for the service for an initial period of 5 years, with an option to extend for up to a further 2 years following the completion of a tender process. The Cabinet authorises the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, to execute a contract with a successful bidder. I so move.
Thanks, Eddie, and I'm delighted to second that. If I don't choke on my water.
Yeah, bless you, leader.
Yeah, thanks. Are we all in agreement? Excellent. Well, as I said, that's the last report. I don't have any urgent items, and I don't have any part 2 items. So it just leaves me to thank you all for your presence today, and wish you all a good afternoon.